You got folks in the audience for a reason. Let them
Right.
get to it early.
Right.
Do you have water? Yes.
I do. Thank you. How are you, Dan?
Writing Horvath down for the roll call. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Is Ed going to be absent?
Ed will be absent. I think he's the only one. Oh, yeah, he is the only one. I like your scarf.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there a holiday coming up?
Yeah, there's kind of a big holiday. Although I really do not get into it at all. Like, I don't do corned beef and cabbage or anything like that. I might wear green on Sunday. That's about it. Yeah. You know. But my mother must not have liked corned beef that much because we never had it growing
Never
up.
had it.
We did. I never liked it.
I don't care for
Terry
it. It's too
likes it,
salt.
so I make it.
Do
I
you?
make it once a year on St. Patrick's Day.
Visually, it's not the most appealing
No.
No.
dish.
I only have it.
It's
Oh, they make it every year.
You do a good job.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the ambiance.
Yeah. Ready, Dan? All right, ready to call the meeting to order?
Yes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the March combined workshop and regular meeting of your Board of Trustees. To honor our nation's heroes and especially to honor the men and women in uniform who serve and protect our community, please rise and join us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Horvath, thank you for coming to the dais. Thank you for agreeing to be our acting clerk for the duration of the clerk's term. It's nice to see you back up here, and welcome.
Thank you. It's a privilege and an honor to serve.
Thank you. May we have the roll call, please?
Certainly, Madam President. Trustee Allen.
Hi, or here.
We hope you're not
Trustee
high.
Hanson.
Here.
Trustee Rudolph.
Here.
Trustee Sifferman.
Here.
Trustee Timick is absent. Trustee Terrell.
Here.
Thank you. Because we have several members of our community here today, we believe for the Flat Creek Greenway update, we thought we would switch the agenda around a little bit and pull up the report from Trustee Hanson as chair of the Properties and Recreation Committee so that we don't keep anyone waiting unduly. So, Trustee Hanson.
Thank you, President Gallagher. As you know, on February 19th, staff held a meeting here to discuss a proposed mixed-use path that would extend north from Plainfield Road to somewhere near 55th Street. This meeting was held to provide residents information on the history of the proposed project, present a summary of the grant funding, and solicit questions regarding concerns about this project. In your packet tonight is the presentation that was presented that night. There were approximately 72 people present, and residents were invited to leave comments and questions on note cards for additional follow-up. These comments, there were 34 in all, are also in our packets. Of these 34 comments, 16 had questions or concerns, 13 residents stated they opposed the project, and 5 people stated they are in favor of the project. Those comments are, as I said, in your packet. Generally, the concerns were the impact this project would have on the privacy, security, noise, and maintenance of this path as far as residents' lives are concerned for those residents living near the path. Also, concerns were expressed about the ecological impact this project could have on the creek itself, the wildlife that live there, and potential flooding issues. The Properties and Recreation Committee is looking for advice or discussion as to the next step. Do we want to do a feasibility study that could answer these questions, or we are seeking the board's advice on where to go next?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just had a few comments as well regarding the timing of looking at this again. This is a concept that has been around for a long time. We did receive grant funds for this through CMAQ, which is a federal granting organization that supplies funds for multimodal uses to reduce pollution impacts primarily. So this grant will expire in September of 2020 if we're not shovel ready at that time. And because of that, and with the tollway expansion project, we felt that this is the time to look into it, given that that other agencies may be able to help contribute to this project and thereby reduce the village's portion. It was always considered that this is part of a regional plan, but would it be an amenity to Western Springs residents? However, if our residents feel that it's not an amenity, then we just won't go forward with it. It's plain and simple. But again, currently the Greenway is just a concept. In an effort to be as transparent as possible, staff reopened the discussion by hosting a public meeting in February. I want to thank our staff, especially Director Super, Assistant Director Biernacki, and also our resident engineer, not resident, but village engineer, Jeff Ziegler, for hosting that meeting and answering questions. The purpose of that meeting was to kickstart the discussion with interested residents, identify concerns, and obtain ideas to help in the initial design of the Greenway. We appreciate all of the time and effort that has been devoted to writing our trustees with your concerns, to gathering petition signatures, and all of your other efforts done regarding this project. In that petition, it was stated that the village should divert the funds that are available for the Flat Creek Greenway to complete sidewalks and install streetlights. I want to reiterate that this grant is project specific and funds cannot be transferred to other projects. The village does promote the completion of sidewalks through our sidewalk policy that we have in effect, and we have had that in effect for quite a while. That policy requires new homes to put in sidewalks at their own cost and encourages participation through a shared cost construction on a block-by-block basis. But with regard to the multimodal path, we are at the very beginning of an exploratory process, and staff now has a clear understanding of resident concerns regarding the proposed Greenway. In my opinion, we collectively, that's the board, staff, and our residents, do not yet have enough information to determine whether or not the multimodal pathway should be pursued. The concerns raised by our residents, such as the exact location of the path and the entry-exit portals, are logistical concerns that are still to be identified. Other safety and aesthetic concerns, such as lighting, security cameras, landscaping, fencing, policing, etc., are all considerations yet to be explored and addressed before, again, in my opinion, any decision is reached. If we were to proceed, a feasibility report would be the next step in this process and would help answer these open issues. Jeff, if you could please comment on what a feasibility report would address and what that step going forward would be if we were to take it.
Okay, thank you, President Gallagher. A feasibility report basically would summarize, take a look at all the locations, all of these things that you previously discussed, which would be the safety, location. It's basically the type of path, the size, and identify all those obstacles that would be obstacles in terms of opportunities to require us to do certain things in the floodplain, floodways, all of those things that would impact the design or potential design of a bike path or a multi-use path. We would take those concepts, apply the federal guidelines to those concepts because federal monies are involved. And if federal monies aren't involved, of course, you have more leeway. But with federal dollars, you have certain standards that you need to meet. For instance, the width of the multi-use path and the shoulders on the multi-use path, those type of things are specified by federal guidelines. And also, in addition to that, would be the logical termini of where the path would begin and end, and look at it more regionally, and then also down more granular down into the general alignment and things like that of the actual bike path. So safety is job one on most things, and then meeting all the federal guidelines, and then identifying those unique things and extraordinary things that would be part of the path. So that's generally speaking what the feasibility study would look at, more from a more comprehensive just approach, and to try and address the concerns of the community at large.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
I know it's hard to predict, but what is a ballpark estimate of what a feasibility study would cost?
Generally speaking, depending on the extent of the feasibility study, feasibility studies are much less costly than a phase one study. So phase one studies today require us to do full complete survey. With a feasibility study, we can use localized mapping and things like that, less intensive and from the engineering surveying context. And so we're probably looking at something in the $50,000 range to complete a study of that type of nature, studying probably from 55th Street up. I think we talked about a corridor from 55th Street down to Plainfield Road. Was the original corridor that we were looking at. But included in that study would be looking more at some of the regional stuff too, because there has to be a basis for the connectivity and things like that within the feasibility of this.
What kind of time frame would there be? And could this study also examine the nexus with the tollway project?
The answer to the question is yes. A feasibility study should consider the tollways project, and I would say from beginning to end, for a feasibility study, depending on how many public meetings may come out of that study, you're probably looking at about 2 to 3 months.
Thank you.
And I have a question about any liability, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know this. If we were to go forward with this and we have essentially a park or whatever, is there a liability at all about the fact that there's a creek there? And I don't even know how deep that creek is. Could a child drown in that creek? Would you need to have any fencing around or anything? I really don't know. I'm thinking of the Naperville Riverwalk. There's no fencing along that Riverwalk, is there?
Well,
There is?
In
Okay.
terms of liability issues, I would defer to Attorney Jaruzik, but generally speaking, those things we would look at, and we would have a discussion with the village attorney as part of the feasibility study to iron those particular things out. Currently, there is open land there. There is an open space Anybody can go down from either side of the creek
Right.
currently today. And what those additional liabilities could be if you put a path there, I would yield to Attorney Juris.
Sure.
I'm
There's
just
a-
thinking of a time when I was
No.
in China, and there's
Yeah.
like a river right there, and there's little kids running around. I always thought that was so strange. But
And there are pedestrian paths that border creeks and culverts and what have you, and throughout Illinois. And the bottom line is, where it's appropriate, where slopes are such, where water's deep, where it's fast moving, you'll see typically separation fencing. The path itself, there's going to be a tort immunity protection because it's going to be a recreational path. But there is general tort immunity for the village when it builds and maintains projects, as long as it doesn't do it willfully and wantonly. It doesn't, just totally disregard common sense. There's typically not liability, but there's always the potential for claims. Claims are expensive to defend. And so, in terms of doing this evaluation and the feasibility study, we would look at where it makes sense for security purposes and just common sense to separate. Again, some parts of Flat Creek have a very steep grade. Little child, may have difficulty getting out of that area. Part of Flat Creek has a box culvert that sometimes has really fast-moving water depending on, conditions. So, that would all tie into the overall physical structure of the pathway that gets built. Where is it necessary to protect the public from the environment? And so that would all be baked into this feasibility study and a project report.
Right, we would look at the fact that how much area is up there and what's the recoverability area, things like that, in terms of bicycles, and that type of pedestrian traffic, things like that, to become errant and go off the path or something like that. There are things we call recovery zones, things like that need to be adequate. Those are all part of the federal standards. Those need to be looked at.
Any other questions from board members?
I had one. This really doesn't have anything to do with a feasibility study, but I know this issue came before the board before I came on.
Right.
And I remember reading a lot of vitriol. A lot of people were very much against it. And the emails that I have received already seem to be overwhelmingly against it. Do we do any canvassing of that area other than, to give the people who don't email and haven't come to the meeting a chance to say what they would like? Do we go to is it door to door? Because there's a finite number of houses that would be directly impacted upon this, and I'd like to hear more representational of that community rather than just the people that come out and say we're against it.
Right, well, the starting and ending points of the path have changed since that first proposal. Now it's not in Forest Hills, and it would be west of Flat Creek, where the prior path was east of Flat Creek. So that has changed. But I don't believe we've done any canvassing, and I don't think we would in this situation. It would be up to the residents, I think, to notify us.
As they came forward
Yes.
2 weeks ago.
Right.
Okay.
Jeff, thanks. I have a question, Jeff. The way the feasibility, what I thought I just heard is it would be defined somewhere around 55th Street to somewhere around Plainfield Road. What about the connectivity to some of the other paths, either going further south or going further north? Because I think that was one of the original concepts of this. Would that be included in the feasibility or specifically excluded because we're focusing on just that area?
Well, in the greater context of what regional planning and those type of things that are being done, or things that are being planned, would be included in the report. It only makes sense if you're going to build something. There is ultimate connectivity, things like that, to other areas. That's what the goal is. I can share with you that recently we had met with the folks at Cook County Department of Transportation and Highways. They are very interested in doing a path down southern half of Wolf Road and bringing that up into the Plainfield Road area. We also discussed a new bike and pedway path over the new Plainfield Road Bridge that's being proposed in about 2 or 3 years as part of the toll road work. So in the greater context, yes, but not down into specifics, into what paths are going to be built at what particular time or anything like that. But the goal would be connectivity.
Any other questions?
Just curious as to what other nearby communities have sort of similar paths, similar kind of amenities? I'm trying to kind of just envision an end state, so if there's something for comparison.
I don't know. One of the emails we received, I think, or maybe it was in the petitions comments, referenced Elmhurst, but I don't know anything about that.
I think we would have to maybe poll the communities and take a look. I don't
Okay.
want to do any guessing game at this
Okay.
point, so.
I feel like there may be some like in Burr Ridge maybe that I just, maybe out of the corner of my eye I've seen, but okay.
Good point. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you for your patience. At this point, we'll open the meeting up to the public to address concerns specifically on this issue before we return to the rest of our meeting. So would anyone like to speak to the trustees this evening? Hi.
My name's Sheila O'Malley. I'm a local resident and a real estate professional. I have brought for the board copies of the signed petitions. As of 6:30 tonight, we've had 225.
Thank
Comments
you.
are also included. I know that you got the link to the petition as well. So anything that is new and updated, you have access to that as well. Presenting that petition, we neighbors and residents of Western Springs are here to present a petition requesting the Village of Western Springs Board of Trustees, its employees, and agents stop planning and development of the bike path along Flag Creek Greenway between Plainfield Road and 47th Street, or in this case 55th. We petition all grants related to Flag Creek Greenway Phase 1 and Phase 2 be vacated. The petition further requests that although there may have been board discussions dating back to 2008 or possibly earlier, the future well-being and peace of mind of property owners in the neighborhoods of Forest Hills and Ridgewood demand that the discussion of this bike path along the creek be permanently closed. By signing this petition, you are requesting the Village of Western Springs abandons the Flag Creek Greenway project and directs its resources towards safe sidewalks and lights for the village, and thank you for your support. 225 people have signed this and also provided comments. The board member had said that the emails have also been presented to you guys as well as far as voicing their opinions. To directly address your canvassing, in the prior discussions back in 2017, we did canvass Forest Hills. Residents, children took flyers, went door to door, and let them know about this project. And so canvassing was involved in Forest Hills 2 years ago. So multiple residents who may not have email access were alerted of this situation. When the project resurrected and we attended the open house led by Director Subert and Engineer Ziegler, we presented the Flag Creek Greenway project. We voiced our opposition at that point and also attended their committee meeting and voiced, again, our opposition to this project. Now, we've taken the time to attend this board meeting along with these signatures. We still do not want this bike path along the creek from 55th to 47th. The opportunity to seek grant money should not outweigh the concerns of the Western Springs residents. The top-sided reason for stopping this project is that residents want sidewalks and not a bike path in people's backyards. They want safe, connected sidewalks for wheelchairs, for children and elderly citizens to walk freely without safety concerns and build a sense of community and, again, safety. A trail that connects Cook County running through our backyards that cannot be controlled and patrolled at all times does not make residents feel safe. They want privacy. For those who border the creek, this will significantly impact the way they live in their homes and will change the reason for selecting these homes. This will ultimately negatively impact our property values. Again, both as a homeowner and a real estate professional, I can provide numerous examples along Venus Woods and LaGrange Park and Brookfield showing a decreased value in those homes that are adjacent to the path. Many residents have cited along the Prairie Path in Elmhurst and Glen Ellen increased crime along the path, including burglary and assault. Citing a letter from President Gallagher that this was considered to be a nature path was disingenuous when the primary purpose stated in the open house advocated for an asphalt multi-use bike path for connectivity, linking Ridgewood and Forest Hills to the greater Cook County path system. This project is not a nature path that would beautify the community. It would require engineering and be located next to a tollway wall and will require lights, security, and fencing in Forest Hills. Additionally, this will interfere with the wildlife living along the Greek corridor. Privacy and safety means that residents would not build the low wrought iron fencing as used in timber trails or other areas, but will look at privacy fencing that ultimately change the landscape, so will no longer be a green space. Additional asphalt and decreased green space will also cause drainage issues in an area that desperately needs proper drainage. In closing, a comment from the petition read, "This project seems to have 9 lives, and this must end. This issue raises anxiety for our residents and agitation. We ask that this grant opportunity as presented along the creek be abandoned. Please listen to those who have taken the time to sign, to write letters and emails and comments in these petitions, and taken the time to attend all these meetings. We do not want this project. We respectfully ask that the village focus its efforts on possible grants from the government in the future for neighborhood sidewalks. We thank you for your time and attention."
Thank you. And thank you for putting this all together. Here's extra copies if you need them, but appreciate all the effort that you and your fellow committee members did in putting this together. Thanks for your comments. Anyone else? Yes, please, come on up. Oh. And I'd just like to reference our public comment guidelines in that, so that the board can get on with its other business of the evening, that we keep our comments to separate thoughts that have not already been promoted, and keep the comments to 3 minutes in length. Thank you.
Hi,
Good evening.
Charles Herbst, 502 Fairholme, Western Springs. Just to clarify, when does this grant, you have to have a shovel ready by what date?
September 2020.
September 2020. And how long does you have to do a phase 1 after you do the other, right? So how long does the phase 1 take?
It would depend on, you're asking me to speculate about how long the phase 1 is gonna take, based upon the fact that we're gonna generate a feasibility study. Sorry. Based upon the fact that we're going to do a feasibility study, the phase 1's going to take a lot less time than it would otherwise.
Okay. It doesn't sound like you all really are listening to what we've been saying over the last few years. It sounds like you want to move forward with this still. And we'll just continue to block it, I guess, as much as we can. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sir? Good evening.
My name is Tom Raditz. I live at 5124 Fairhouse.
Welcome.
I was one of 3 people that attended that last board meeting. It was about 10:30 in the morning. You were newly appointed, I think, at the time. And at that meeting, it was pretty much clear that we were going to shelve it. That was what everybody was told the night before, or a few days prior to that. And then at that meeting, one of the board members was adamant about moving forward. We should take a vote and move forward. And then you finally quashed that. And there was 2 other people at the meeting. I'm sorry, I don't recall who they were. One of the concerns that I have personally, and some of my neighbors have had as well, is that what we looked at, we're coming in and we're looking at a map that looks like somebody took a marker and just kind of drew a line on it and said, this is one proposal, this is another, and it wasn't clear as to where it was. And they keep saying east of the creek, but if you're going through Fair Elms, down Fair Elms, there's no land east of the creek. So are they talking about up against the highway?
It's west of the creek, correct?
Or west, I'm sorry, west of the creek. There's lots of land east of the creek, which is what a lot of us are concerned about, is that we're gonna have this thing in our backyard. I have a swimming pool, I don't want my kids out there,
Sure.
you know, and people riding by on bicycles.
Sure.
You know,
Can-
and so we're not clear about the exact paths, right?
Yeah, if I could, so the concepts were originally, this goes years and years and years back
Right,
because
this
of the
is 16 years
discussion.
or something that's been going
It
on, right?
was on, it varied on which side of the creek, depending on where the location was.
Right, so right now, we're proposing areas, but it could change based on your study. So we could say, oh, okay, we like that idea, but then that can change, and then there won't be another hearing, it'll just be done.
No,
That's
that
not-
would not change without
No.
notice and publication.
And then the other thing that we're saying now is that this is to end at 55th, it's supposed to go from Joliet to 55th.
Plainfield to 50th.
I'm sorry.
Plainfield to 55th.
55th. But it's just gonna dump out on 55th, or there's gonna be another plan for it to go all the way through to Bemis, right? That's the end game, right? Isn't that what we're trying to get to?
Well, not necessarily. There is a project right now between LaGrange, Countryside, and McCook, I believe, to build, to reconstruct 55th Street going west. And potentially it would connect with that bike route when they do that.
Which bike route though?
There will be
The new one that they're gonna build.
a multimodal path that they're building with the reconstruction.
And
of
it's not going
55th.
down Wolf Road, right?
Potentially,
I mean, there was
That's-
conversation that Wolf Road was a county road and
It is a county route, so, but the, I know that in Countryside and, it would be east of Wolf Road is where they're doing the work, but it's also like 300 feet east of the intersection. It stops 300 feet before that. It's the, unincorporated
So where do
area
the
there.
bikers go when they get to the end? They just turn around and go back? I mean,
Right,
seriously,
and
I mean, the problem is
that's
because
their-
there's
their
too many
project,
unknowns.
yes.
There's so many unknowns here.
Mhm.
And you wanna do a study up to that point, but we don't know what's, yeah, okay, we do a study to that point and we say, okay, this is what we think we wanna do, but we don't know what we're gonna do next. So I think it's too many unknowns. And especially if you know, I mean, I bought here because I had a big yard and big open space, and then now I'm worried about people riding their bikes in my backyard. I got kids in my pool. You know, I mean, I like the privacy. The reason I bought my house is because it backed up to a creek.
Right.
I actually didn't even know that subdivision was behind me when I bought it, because the trees were there. Once the leaves fell, I found out, but that's how private it was back there. I actually didn't know that was back there
right.
when I first bought the house. So, I mean, that's what I loved about it, that's why I bought it. I never envisioned that there was gonna be potentially a road going behind my house.
Well, that is not what we're considering at all, but you're right. This section of path is
But if they get to
just a
55th,
section, and they get to 55th.
Right? I mean, let's be realistic here. I mean, I know no one's saying that this is a plot, but if they get to 55th, and now they wanna continue to Bemis, which has to be the end goal to get to other forest preserve.
Well,
Right? Where's the logical place for it to go? Right behind Fair Elms, right on the east side of the creek, not the west side, because their backyards basically fall into the creek. And as far as the creek goes, it goes anywhere from 6 inches when it's dry. I've seen it to 4 feet from the top, which is probably about 12 feet. So that creek can become a raging river when you get heavy rains. So that's all I have to say. I'm sorry.
thank you. Thanks for your comments. Anyone else?
I'm Scott Merrifield from Fair Elms Avenue, Western Springs. I want to second his comment about the water level, the question that was asked by Trustee Rudolph. It gets very high. It gets quite rapid. And the tollway is going to be a 40% increase since. I didn't hear any question at the last tollway meeting about the water plan. I've got concerns about flooding, let alone having a fence to keep kids out of the rapid river at times. I would like to ask the board, if you're only talking about Ridgewood, west of the creek, can you emphatically state tonight that east of the creek in Forest Hills, there will not be any path?
That is not our intention. We are not.
That's not emphatic.
I can speak for myself, and as far as speaking for the board, we do not intend to build a path going north along Flat Creek East in Forest Hills.
That's my understanding as well.
Thank you.
Any other comments? And again, I just want to remind people if you have something new, please approach the board. Hi.
I've got a couple new. I'm Dave Mahar from 5806 Ridgewood Drive, and I sent you guys a letter. I walked the pathway with my son-in-law, who's a civil engineer. And we looked at it because I thought, you know what, I had always told my kids that there was no way that they're ever going back there because of the danger. I said, you could get into that creek as a little kid. Both my kids are now in college or graduated. But when they were little, if you got into that creek, there was really no way because of the erosion of the banks to get out. And so we put the fear of God in our kids never to go back behind the hedges or to go into that river. And so honestly, I took the same advice, and I'd never been back there in my 20 years that I've lived in Ridgewood. So we walked it a couple weeks ago, and just because I thought, hey, Drew, you're a civil engineer, I want to get your perspective. And we identified 3 to 4 areas where there's no way a path can get through without major engineering modifications. Draining that would have to be modified, the box culvert, getting around that. Being able to keep the soil on the hillside because of the pitch of the hillside so often. There were 3 or 4 places where Drew's like, there's no way a path can get through here without major retaining walls being put in, drainage modifications to the box culvert. I attended a meeting probably a little over a year ago that was over at the school about the tollway and the plans and everything. And the only thing I spoke about was just the view that we have out of the back of our place in the winter. And cleaned our windows the other day, and we're reminded of just the slew of trash that gets thrown over the wall. The tollway has made 0 effort to clean that hill. They said that they would be out in that hill within 6 to 8 weeks and take care of it. It's covered with trash. We look right out of it until the trees leaf out. And that's another issue with the flooding and the erosion. And if we're going to take away the area for the water to be absorbed, right now, our hedge line on a big storm, the water's right up to it. And so I walked the neighborhood also 3 weeks ago with a friend, just kind of canvassing and bringing up awareness and asking people to come to the meeting. And I noticed in that walk how many folks have offset garages in the back of their house that are at the same exact line as the shed that we have in our backyard. All of those structures would be vulnerable because the creek, as the gentleman before said, it gets way up high, sometimes 12 to 14 feet. It's going to compromise the foundation of those garages. It's going to start eroding property lines where we're going to enter into a whole new discussion about trying to get a zone variance so that we can start building retaining walls so that our property doesn't slowly go into the creek. Being a runner, I've covered all the bike trails around, especially Bemis Woods. This time of year as a runner is really lousy because what happens when a path floods is you end up with about 6 to 8 inches of silt over it. It's not passable by bike, it's not passable running because it's just a complete milkshake. It usually takes the county until about May 15th to get all of those clear. So we're talking about a bike path that's going to start at Flag Creek and enter into a floodplain that's going to get covered in the winter, that now we have an increased maintenance to the city of, or to the village of Western Springs, that's going to have to go in and scrape that bike path, remove all of that silt every year when that bike path goes underneath the water, which it will, because that floodplain has got to be at least 400 meters long that we're talking about starting it. So my question is, why would we start a project that starts on a floodplain, ends with another major engineering feat, the pitch and the engineering underneath the 55th on-ramp that's already going to be worked on the other side of the tollway, to try and to engineer that on the other side. Again, for my son-in-law engineer, he's like, this is hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to make a path that can pass under that area. So a bike path, neither village on either side wants it. It starts on a floodplain, it ends with an engineering nightmare to get under 55th, if that's in, obviously, Flag Creek. The folks next door, Forest Hills, don't want that at all. Why would we do it? I think we should just cut our losses right now, take that 50K and use it to fill potholes, save the feasibility study. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, well, thank you very much. Oh, sure.
My name is Scott McNess, 5824 Ridgewood Drive. So I have to say I do agree with a lot of the things that everybody has said, especially Sheila. I'm also in the real estate industry, and I personally had a lot of trouble selling homes when they line up, again, along a bike path, if they're too close to the forest preserves, and again, when they're near like an apartment building, which isn't related to this, but it just shows those are some of the major areas where I specifically had trouble selling homes. I went along with a friend to unofficially canvass some of the homes along Ridgewood Drive. 29 homes in Ridgewood, along Ridgewood Drive that back up to the creek, and about 24 homes along Flag Creek in Timber Trails. Again, everybody that I talked to was against it. I'm surprised there weren't more people here today, but I think maybe people didn't necessarily know about it or were unavailable. Again, I know that Sheila presented a online petition, but I could get a paper one for all of those specific homes that line the creek if you'd like to see that as well. And then security-wise, at the last meeting, somebody had mentioned it was for the bike path, that they weren't concerned about security because they said that it's usually teenagers that they've seen along the bike path in Timber Trails. But really, it's not the teenagers that we're concerned about, it's the more dangerous criminals and more hardcore security risks that we're most concerned about. So those are some of the things I just want to bring to your attention.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Anybody else? Well, thank you very much for coming out this evening. The Properties and Rec Committee will go back and discuss all of your comments, the petition, as well as the potential for continuing or ending this inquiry now. And we will then report again next month at the first meeting in April. All right. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Oh, please come up. Go ahead.
So you'll vote at the next meeting if you're going to go forward, or is
No, there won't be an official vote. We may at the next meeting, if the committee decides to recommend to the board that we conduct a feasibility study, then the board will take that into consideration, and then the vote will be taken at the second meeting in April.
So the vote will be on the feasibility?
Yes, just on the feasibility.
If that makes that.
If it makes it, yeah. So the committee will go back and discuss all of the information that we have accumulated here and determine whether or not they recommend that the board continue with a feasibility study.
So that will be voted on the next meeting?
That will be presented at the next meeting, voted on at the April meeting.
Well, it will be presented at the first meeting in April. I don't remember, I don't
Yes.
know the date.
But it would not be voted on until the second meeting.
So the next meeting that we have at the board is in 2 weeks from tonight. It won't be discussed then, but then we will have a committee meeting. The Properties and Recreation Committee will meet, and we will discuss it again. And based on our conversation and recommendation to the whole board, then it would be brought, we would present something to the board at the first April meeting, and we would then, as a board, vote whether or not to do a feasibility study. If we recommend doing a feasibility study, we would be voting at the second April meeting. I don't know those dates.
April 22nd is the second meeting.
Okay.
The first meeting is April 8th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so quickly, have you heard from anybody who actually wants this bike path? Because right now, I've heard from everybody that doesn't want it. So who wants it?
I have heard from a few people.
Are their homes impacted by this bike path?
No.
Okay, so anybody that's homes are impacted by the bike path, have you heard from anybody who's paying taxes on these homes that are along this proposed route that we don't really know what the proposed route is yet? Have you heard from anybody who says, yeah, I really want this?
No, but
Okay,
then
well,
again, but you just said
I
it,
would-
we don't know what the
I would
proposed
hope
route
that you would
is.
take that into consideration and make in your determination.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate your advocacy and your communication with the board. Are there any other residents here who would like to comment on another matter not related to the Flat Creek Greenway? No? Having read the agenda, does any trustee have any addition or deletion to the remainder of tonight's agenda? No? Hearing none, we'll move on to the workshop portion of our meeting. First up, Public Works and Water Committee, Trustee Allen.
We're going to do the agenda items.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Yes, we have two action items tonight during the special meeting portion of the combined meeting. Trustee Allen, I almost stole your thunder.
I was so excited to read a resolution. Resolution 19-2478, I'd like to make a motion authorizing and approving the execution of a professional services agreement between the Village of Western Springs and Baxter and Woodman, Inc. in regard to construction services for the standpipe maintenance and repainting, well number 5, water transmission main, water supply well number 5, and well number 5 sanitary sewer replacement projects.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I'll just make a quick comment on this. This is something we talked about in Public Works and Water Committee. So there's 4 service agreements with Baxter and Woodman. 3 of them are covered under the IEPA loan. The wording's a little bit different, so I'm just gonna kind of just summarize for everyone what they are. The standpipe maintenance, we know that one's for $42,000. Well number 5, water main transmission, that was $49,905. Water supply well number 5, that's really the construction of well number 5. I think to join the pipe or the hole, that's $59,300. The one that's not covered by the IEPA is the well number 5 sanitary replacement project for $3,500. That was redirecting Enfield Park, an existing sanitary line. So that's all the comments I have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Clerk Horvath, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Madam President. Trustee Allen.
Aye.
Trustee Hansen.
Aye.
Trustee Rudolph.
Aye.
Trustee Sifferman.
Aye.
Trustee Timick is absent. Trustee Terrell.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to our motion, Trustee Hansen.
Thank you, President Gallagher. I would like to make a motion to award a contract for the 2019 landscape contract to Brightview Landscaping, formerly known as Brickman Landscaping, for the contract price of $34,700. As you'll recall, on February 11th, 2019, the board rejected all bids due to lack of qualifications of the low bidder and approved a waiver of bidding process regarding the 2019 landscape contract. The board authorized staff to solicit competitive proposals for the 2019 landscape contract.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Clerk Horvath, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Madam President. Trustee Allen.
Aye.
Trustee Hansen.
Aye.
Trustee Rudolph.
Aye.
Trustee Sifferman.
Aye.
Trustee Timick is absent. Trustee Terrell.
Aye.
Thank you. Now we'll move back to the consideration of agenda items during the workshop portion of our meeting. Trustee Allen.
Thank you, President Gallagher. Another lengthy report. Item A, capital summary report, is the latest version with the 2019 projects are in our packet. These include comments from Public Works and Water, Property and Rec Commission, and also the infrastructure. Staff is working on even a more refined version that hopefully will come out in April. There are 8 projects within the Public Works and Water that we are tracking through this. Most of these we've talked about at some level, but I did want to make a couple notes. But if you have questions on any of them, feel free to interrupt or ask. Number 3 was a standpipe repainting. The one update, again, that is an IEPA funded loan for that project. One of the things that came up in our committee was the need to get the cell towers that are on top of that off in order for us to do the work that needs to be there. The village gave proper notification to the cell tower, or I'm sorry, the cell phone providers, and they've expressed some concern about meeting the date that we gave notice to, which is in their contract. We're working around that very hard to try to see if we can do some of the interior work. We've taken a strong position that we gave notice. They need to commit to their contract. And the concern is that it is a rather long process. It's about 100 days of working days, and that it could shift out into the summer if there are any delays. And the summers, as you know, is when we have more water demand, and having that one of our two water towers down is a concern. So we're moving very quickly. Staff is working very hard on it, and we're taking a very aggressive position with the cell providers on that one. 2018 roadway program, really that was really substantially completed in 2018. What's left to do in 2019 is some of the landscaping primarily. So that is something that we will be tracking into 2019. The 2019 roadway program is mostly Clawson North. There will be a water main work underneath it. This is coming from the road referendum. The 2019 motor fuel tax resurfacing. So this is the $350,000-ish a year we get in motor fuel tax revenue. It is also going towards roads. It's doing resurfacing, which tends to be a little less expensive, but also doesn't have quite as long of a lasting period. So if you think about the road referendum, that's primarily for concrete reconstruction, which is more expensive, but has a much longer lasts a lot longer. And then this 350 or so-ish, it varies every year, is primarily targeted towards road resurfacing. So that is one we're going to be watching. The IEPA loan-funded Clawson water main. The point here is that in conjunction, the village has been undertaking the lead pipe survey. And one of the issues with this that is still being worked on is kind of the service from the water main to the junction boxes owned by will be done by the village because we're upending the water main. But the service from the Buffalo box to their house is something that, depending if the residents want to, would be something that they would undertake on their own. So be more communication on that, but I did want to alert you to that because it's really kind of the first time we've come into this with the lead survey results. 2019 sewer televising, this is the 5th year of the program. For this pass, it's primarily Old Town North and parts of Springdale and Fairview Estates. The good news here is that going forward, we need to develop a plan to kind of hit the high, or I should say the poor quality areas. So we're not going to be tasked with having to do 1/5 of the village each year. Instead, it's going to be very focused on the areas where there's a concern. So that's important. The other thing is that this summer we are being required to do a smoke testing, which is literally where smoke is pushed through under pressure into the sewers, storm sewers, to see if there's any unauthorized connections. So think about downspouts going directly into the sewer, or people discharging from their sump pumps going into the sewer, as opposed to what should be happening is it should be going out on the lawn, where the lawn would have an opportunity to absorb that excess water. And we're not pushing the water into the sewers where it has to go down and be treated, which is relatively clean water. And so it's raising the cost for that sanitation work. We've done this before. It is impactful for residents because some may have connections that they didn't know they didn't have, and so there will be a lot of communication that will go out in advance so people are aware that the testing will be there. But literally, if you have one of these unauthorized connections, you could experience smoke in your house. And then if that is the case, then once you are notified of that, you would be under the homeowner's obligation to get a proper connection that meets our village code. Are there any comments on the capital summary report? Those were some of the highlights that we talked about in our committee. Okay, letter B, Ridgewood Oak cost share and special service assessment. Discussions are ongoing with the Homeowners Association Board. And I believe the Finance Committee is being tasked to look at some of the financing options as to how it will be repaid, either through the property taxes, over what time frame and what interest rate. So that is being worked on simultaneously. Item C, the B&W construction, Baxter and Woodman, I should say, construction supervision contracts. This is what we just voted on. One point I failed to make was that the reason we did this sort of not in our normal cycle of talking about it first and then voting on it second is that we wanted to get that all teed up for there's a March 31st deadline for an IEPA loan assistance. So we wanted to have that all approved prior to that March 31st deadline. So thank you for that. Letter D, other, just two. The 2016 road referendum, it was brought to our last infrastructure commission. They are looking at it, I would say, and maybe Director Subert has another view, but looking at it really as an engineering problem and a solution. And what I mean by that is, when we first did the first one in 2006, it was $6.5 million. The last one we did in 2016 was $12 million. And trying to think about, well, what is the right number of roads we should repair? Because if you think of our portfolio of roads through the village, they're in different types of condition. They deteriorate at different rates, and how much should we be investing every year to sort of keep ahead of the curve? A really good discussion. One of the things we're looking at is, since we've been investing more money in the road repairs, are we actually seeing an improvement? Is the average condition of our roads throughout the village improving? And maybe also a little more clarity when staff goes out and rates the condition of the roads every spring after the freeze-thaw cycle, what does it mean when it's on a scale of 1 to 25, so people can actually kind of get a little bit better understanding. And it's trying to understand how do you meet what works from an engineering solution with what works from a financing solution when we think about how we're going to pay for the roads. Nothing we need to do, obviously, with the 2016 referendum. That will kind of continue as going. But at some point, the financing for that will run out, and what we want to do with that going forward. And lastly, residents probably did receive their tower topics with an in-depth on the water costs and some of the reasons for the rate changes. I thought that was excellent, so thank you to staff for all your work that went into that. That concludes my report, President Gallagher.
Thank you, Trustee Allen. Moving on to Properties and Rec Committee, Trustee Hansen.
Thank you, President Gallagher. In your packet is the capital summary report for Properties and Recreation. First item is the replacement door update for the water tower, or the historic tower in town. And as you might recall, we discussed this last year. The Western Springs Historical Society had suggested a double door, but due to ADA requirements, that is not feasible. And the amount budgeted in the 2018 budget was not enough for the replacement door, so it was re-budgeted for 2019. And the project will take place when the weather conditions improve, with a preliminary meeting with the architect for this Thursday. Is that correct, Director Subert?
That's correct.
And then the funds from the 2011 Quasquicentennial will be used for this. This has a total budget of $35,000. So that is moving along, and there will likely be a new door sometime in 2019. The next item in the capital summary report is the East Train platform. Again, almost finished, and again, weather conditions need to improve for the remainder of this project to be completed. And then the third item is the Wolf Road bike path, not to be confused with the Flag Creek Greenway. The Wolf Road bike path is on Wolf Road north of Ogden Avenue. And the Phase 1 engineering on this project is almost completed. However, we are still waiting for the Forest Preserve District of Cook County on the tree mitigation cost. This project has gotten a little bit delayed. Some of the paperwork was lost by IDOT, and so we've kind of had to backtrack a little bit. So that is the capital summary report. The next item on my list was the recommendation for the landscaping contract proposal that we just voted on. And you will recall that we discussed this at the last meeting, that the bidders who had bid were not qualified. So we, staff was allowed to solicit new bids and everything. So that's why we voted on that. Next thing is, due to the winter that we have had, we have utilized all of our allotment of salt for the 2018 purchase season, which we purchased through the state of Illinois. And we purchased 800 tons of salt. And in the event that we were to have another weather situation that would require salt to be placed, we would be out of salt. So the staff is requesting that the village board authorize the village manager to expend funds up to $20,000 in the event of an emergency storm event to purchase salt from a third-party vendor, which of course would be more expensive than purchasing it through the state of Illinois. But $20,000 would allow 150 tons of salt to be purchased. Hopefully we will not even need to do this, but we would like to have that cushion in case it were needed, but please pray that we don't. And
do we need to take action on that tonight, or
I'm not sure. Director Supert?
If you're willing to take action on tonight, that would be great. It would allow us a little bit more flexibility over the next couple of weeks. Right now, we do have salt in our salt shed, so we're not in a situation where if we had a storm event in the next, or even 2 storm events, we would be in a dire situation. But you know, based on the severity of the type of storms we would commonly see around this time of year, ice storms, if we had 3, 4, 5 different events, we would be running pretty low on salt.
Ingrid, you have 10,000 already?
It's not listed as an action item on the agenda, so we'd have to have an emergency meeting, you know, under, you know, to authorize an expenditure like that. Or Ingrid has up to $10,000 to at least initiate a price hold, you know, where they can reach out and you know, get a price quote and put a hold on you know, a significant amount of salt, and then come back for a ratification of that approval.
I think that would absolutely be fine.
hopefully we won't need an emergency meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Trustee Hanson.
Okay, so we will, would that go on the omnibus then?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And then the next item on mine is an update on the C-SPAR. As you know, C-SPAR is interested in using a room at Grand Avenue for a sensory room, and they met, the Recreation Department staff, the C-SPAR staff, and the architects from 845 Design Group met last week for a planning session, and they went over the whole room and looked at every part of the room to see what needs to be done to make the room ready for C-SPAR to put in their own equipment for the sensory room. And Jamie Zora is the architect. She took a lot of notes, and she's going to prepare a proposal for the village as to what our cost will be. And so this is just moving along. Director Alden, anything else? No. Okay, so that's just really an update on the C-SPAR sensory room that will be probably not operational till the fall. Okay. And then that's all.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Moving on to the Finance Committee, Trustee Rudolph.
Thank you, President Gallagher. First, I want to echo the great work or the commendation on the water and sewer guide for 2019. I think that staff worked very hard to put together what ended up, I think, being a very informative guide for our residents in terms of explaining what the cost increase is all about, helping really break it down in terms of what it means to our residents, and helping to show what the future is. So I do hope that our residents all take the time to read it and understand it. I've already been reaching out to some of my friends to see if we get some additional feedback. So again, thank you to everybody involved. I know it was a really big effort, so thank you on that. And second, I'm going to turn it over to Director Turi, but at their last meeting, we had a resident, Mr. Hagan, question the communication that came in his tax bill, and he was asking about some of the debt reduction numbers, and Director Turi has done some research into that and is going to provide us an update. And the screen is not projecting.
It'll warm up.
Okay.
This is in regards to the debt disclosure ordinance that's required by the county treasurer, that is part of your tax bill. Just as a point of reference, this information is at the discretion of the county treasurer. She asks for the information and how it's presented at her discretion. Data that she presents comes from municipalities and from the taxing body. So when Mr. Hagan came in and mentioned that there's a 47% funding source, I was alarmed, so I didn't know where that number was coming from. So I did some investigation, and just for point of reference again, what some of those columns maybe, because I think they're not clearly marked, but first column is basically the amount of money, the difference between the total of all the debt and the sum total of the net pension liability. Second column is the total pension liabilities that the village has for the entire IRS pension. And then the third column, which is probably most important, which is your net pension liability for all those pension funds. And then the fourth column represents the amount that's available to meet this obligation. And based on the tax bills that you've all received, you saw that there's 47% available to meet our pension obligations, which is not correct. And I was alarmed by that because it doesn't correspond with what's on our CAFR. So I did some investigation, and what was presented on the tax bill is the first line, and what should have been presented is on the second line. And the difference comes in the second column, where it was presented that we have $30 million, and in reality it was $52 million in total amount that's total liability. And that number, the 52 million, was incorrectly input by me. So that's all on me. But when the new calculation is made, you see that we have 69% available to fund our liability, total liability. So what that means is that of the $52 million that we have in total liability, only $16 million is unfunded. So the rest is, we have funds for the rest. So our position isn't perfect, but it's much improved than the 47% that was presented in the tax bill. This information is available to the reader if they go to the Cook County Treasurer's website. They can drill down, they can use 2016, they can use 2017 research. Also on their website is our CAFR, so if they don't want to look at the CAFR on our website, they can go to the Cook County Treasurer's website and see this information and drill down to the line items. So I apologize for the error on your tax bill, but in reality, we are a little bit better off than originally presented. So this will be on our website, so the readers interested look at that more carefully at their pleasure. So I do want to thank Mr. Hagan for bringing that to our attention. It's clearly an error.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Director Torrey, what's the benchmark? I know these things are never fully funded, but is it 60% or 55%? What's the benchmark we want to strive for?
Well, we've been working with the Police Pension Fund, which is a part of that. We've been trying to inch our way up. Right now, we're about 55%. We just try to work up to a higher percentage. We obviously, the higher is better, but we don't really have a benchmark in the sense that we have to, by state's mandate, have to be 100% funded by 2033. So ultimately, you want to be 100% funded by that year. So our goal is to keep inching up to that percentage by 2033. IMRF, which is funded pretty well at, I believe, 88%. They also have a mandate to be funded at 100% by a certain year. So our goal always is to make sure our mandates are being met.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it?
That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Rudolph. Moving on to Public Health and Safety Committee, Trustee Sipperman.
Madam President, there are 3 items that I'd like to report out on following our committee meeting earlier this evening. The first item is an announcement that was made by Chief Kenny regarding a resource that's available, and that resource emanates out of the Hinsdale Fire Department in an attempt to combat the growing opioid crisis in our community. That has a stranglehold on our community and neighboring communities that can be addressed by the effective use of Narcan. The DuPage County Health Department will be doing some training and distributing Narcan to those attend a meeting that and a training session that's scheduled for April 13th from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the Hinsdale Middle School cafeteria. This training is open to the community at large, but there have been some specific invitations that have been distributed among community members such as principals, nurses, athletic trainers, and school principals and deans. The chief is very familiar with this program, and this is something where the members of the police department and the fire department have all had this training in the past and carry Narcan as another tool in their tool belts. The chief is requesting permission to become an active participant in the presentation at this event and in presenting this to our residents. And the committee believes that this is an important issue that we need to maintain effective vigilance and in service to our community. Chief, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think probably the most important part is the inclusivity. Hinsdale Fire Department reached out. We have a great partnership with them and said that this program is being put on through DuPage County Health, and there's no downside to the attendance. Sometimes the people who respond to these men and women who are in distress are their family members, are their teachers, are their coaches. So instead of waiting for a fire department or a police officer to be first on the scene, could be somebody within a few feet of them. And there's no downside to giving the Narcan if it's not needed, but you may save their life if you're able to give it to them. So we have encouraged and have sent out a flyer that was distributed on social media to our residents and said, if your family has been affected by this, please think about attending, because there's no loss by doing so.
Thank you, Chief. The second item comes to us from the chief, a request to declare surplus equipment, and we'd like to add this to our omnibus bill at our next meeting. But this is an important use of resources that can be passed on to other departments that are less fortunate but have a tremendous need. And Chief Kenny has expressed how important it is for us to participate in this, and how appreciative these departments are any opportunity they receive to obtain this equipment that can live on beyond its use here in Western Springs. And I'd like to add that to the omnibus bill next meeting.
We'll add it, thank you.
And then the last item, effective public servants seek feedback from its consumer base on a regular basis. Enlightened public servants use that feedback to improve services. We have an excellent report that was prepared by our accreditation manager, Daisy Chavez, that is the 2018 Community Service Summary. And this is an excellent report. It's the second one that I've seen, and that provides, I think, a great report card on the public service and law enforcement services that are provided to residents and visitors in the community. The 2018 report includes a total of 180 surveys that were mailed, and 68 were returned, for the highest percentage rate that we've ever received, a 37.7% return rate. The number of surveys that reported a problem as the source of their report at 32%, and the second reported problem was they were a victim of a crime. This provides a great analysis and feedback to our department and to the entire village on how our officers are delivering services on the street and how they perform those services. There is tremendous evidence existing in this report that shows that our officers are treating our residents with concern, courtesy, and with a positive attitude. All of the surveys showed either excellent or rated the officers in the excellent category or good category in a number of areas that are listed in this report. This goes a long way in demonstrating to the chief, the members of the department, but also the village administrators, how effective our services, law enforcement services are. And I encourage everybody to take a close look at this, the great work that Daisy Chavez presented in the summary of this report. But then in our analysis and review of last year's report, we, as a committee, suggested that perhaps it would be a good idea to take a look at focusing on traffic stops that involved warning tickets that were issued to drivers in the past year. And this showed a tremendous, I think, a picture of how courteous these situations and the officers' attitude toward residents that really showed their commitment to maintaining a safe environment for our residents. 18 out of the 60 surveys were returned with very positive experiences that the drivers had, a 30% return on those surveys. Many of the individuals offered positive, remarks in addition to stating whether or not they were satisfied with and appreciated the service that was provided. Once again, this is a great step in the direction of providing a great report card to the chief and the entire department. So I encourage everybody to take note. This is posted on the website. Any questions?
No, Attorney Zifferman, I read this, and if I'm not mistaken, wasn't there just one person who got a warning that was disgruntled? All the rest of the warning people were very positive.
Well, but the one person checked yes and no, so maybe that person had a split personality that day and got answers from both.
The officer handled both of them well. I was very impressed by that of the warning people, only one person out of, 19.
Right? Yes. Yes, this reflects very highly on your department, Chief. Thank you for showing us this survey. And congratulations.
And that completes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Zifferman. Moving on to General Government Committee, pinch hitting for Trustee Timick. Trustee Terrell.
Yes, the first item on your agenda is the liquor license request by the Theater of Western Springs. They're requesting a Class I liquor license. That's for special events on property owned by nonprofit organizations. They're coming to us. It didn't go to the liquor control because this is an every year occurrence. They're requesting the license for their Endless Summer event. It's set for Saturday, June 22nd from 5 to 9. It's similar to last year's gala, which it serves as the theater's main fundraising event and has been approved by the board many times in the past. It's an indoor event. The food is donated. The drink, I believe, is donated. They have professional bartenders. They have it very well maintained. But they do need a special event liquor license ordinance to allow the distribution and sale of alcohol. We met with the applicant, Eddie Sugarman, last Monday. He's the executive artistic director. We recommend approval of that. It'll be on the omnibus. The second item that I have involves the work order system request. And Municipal Services Department has interviewed 3 firms to provide a new work order system for the village. And what this is a A work order system is a database. It's a software platform assigned to let the village manage service requests and work orders relative to both internal and external projects be done online. It will be used by Public Works to more effectively manage personnel and equipment in the field for shorter and medium projects. The work order system that we're proposing is a cloud-based platform and will eliminate our current paper-based work orders, which is what we have now. It will allow the residents to submit requests online. The resident and the staff can then track the work order online. Requests now can be submitted online, but the way it works now is that the work orders need to be printed on paper at the Public Works garage. This is going to get away from that step. Our reliance on paper takes days and sometimes weeks to effectively close out an order from start to finish. We've got 9 different facilities, so this is a very positive system that was, I think, more than thoroughly needed. The new system can be accessed from multiple devices in the field, allowing multiple users to assign work and to follow the progress of the work without having to look through the paper in Public Works. It will also aid in our preventative maintenance and management of our field assets, and also to keep track of our internal facility assets like plumbing, HVAC if there's a problem with it, maybe even the vehicles too. The village staff is recommending, they interviewed 3 vendors. The recommended vendor was called Dude Solutions. I'm not making that up. The village thoroughly vetted them, and they are satisfied that they are the best and most suitable to provide this cloud-based work order system. It's $20,000 has been budgeted for this new work order. Dude Solutions has quoted an annual fee of $8,855 with $7,500 for the first year on-site training. Total is $16,335. We had no problem with this. We're going to put this on the omnibus for your consideration next week. The next item I had was the METRA funding. As you may know, we are seeking funding for the West Pedestrian Underpass. It's now planned at Prospect Avenue. This will be constructed concurrent with the tollway project at that same location. METRA recognizes the safety element of the need for an underpass for the village residents, and where we now are going over the tracks at Central, this crossing will be providing obviously a much safer way to get from north to south for students and for people making the train. The crossing at Central will be removed when the tunnel is, or the underpass is put in. And METRA has granted us $200,000 to assist with this project. There's a draft agreement in your packets. We've put forth the terms in an intergovernmental agreement which METRA apparently has accepted in full. We discussed this agreement last week, and we have recommended that it proceed on the omnibus for your approval next week, or 2 weeks from now as well. Finally, we have 2 raffle requests. We have a raffle request from, let's see here now, Western Springs Police Department, which wishes to conduct a raffle request, or do a raffle during the Special Olympics night, which is on August 2nd, 2009 in Springlock Park. The proceeds of the raffle will go to Special Olympics, so the police department is seeking a waiver of the license fee and the bond. We actually discussed this. It was kind of interesting whether the police department had authority to conduct a raffle under the Illinois Raffles Act. It does limit raffles to religious, charitable, labor, business, educational, and veterans, and not-for-profits. And there's a line in the Raffles Act which also reads, and law enforcement officials. So we're acting we're acting lawfully in seeking approval of that. Finally, regarding raffles, an educational non-for-profit, the Western Springs Historical Society, they are also seeking a raffle drawing for their May 19th, 2019 event. It's a house walk event. They are also seeking waiver of the license fee and the bond. Both of these raffle requests we would be putting on the omnibus at our next meeting. And that would conclude my report.
Thank you, Trustee Terrell. I'd just like to mention that we are very grateful to METRA board member Steve Palmer for his advocacy in securing that grant to assist us in the construction of the West Pedestrian Underpass. Thanks. And now, again,
Wait,
plan.
one question. Do we know the updated funding, how that will work out for the underpass?
Yeah, I have a
You mean
similar
how-
question, is kind of like,
how-
that's just one piece of
Right, this
a
is a
much
subset.
bigger.
It is just one piece. We are still waiting to hear about grants from the ICC, the West Suburban Mass Transit District, and the tollway also. So we have about $500,000 still that we have to secure.
And $500,000 would be our share that's not already covered by?
Correct, yes.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
But I think that number is even smaller because we have had some engineering work done by the tollway that we don't have to repeat, so.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to Planning and Zoning Committee, Trustee Terrell.
I have no report.
Oh, thank you. Okay, moving on to my report. First item is a proclamation naming Arbor Day, April 26, 2019. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products, and whereas trees in our village increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of the business area, and beautify our community. And whereas the Village of Western Springs has been recognized as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation and desires to continue its tree planting ways. Now, therefore, we, the members of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Western Springs, Cook County, Illinois, acting by and through the Village President, do hereby proclaim April 26, 2019 as Arbor Day and urge all citizens to support efforts to care for our trees and woodlands and to support our village's community forestry program. And further, we urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the hearts and promote the well-being of present and future generations. Gardening makes a world of difference. So that proclamation will be signed and recorded in due process. Just a quick report on my activities over the past couple of weeks. On March 5th, I attended a meeting of the CMAP Council of Mayors. This was a special meeting to discuss support of legislative initiatives regarding transportation funding and specifically to support a 15-cent increase in the state's motor fuel tax. Currently, the motor fuel tax is 19 cents. It's been almost 3 decades since it's been increased. But there was pushback at that meeting from regions near the state borders. These communities felt like Indiana has finally raised their motor fuel tax, and they felt like they are now on an even playing field and their residents are not going across the border to purchase gas. So no decision was made at that time. I asked about supporting a miles traveled tax that captures hybrids and EVs and fuel-efficient vehicles, but they said while that's in the works at the state level, they're not ready yet to move forward with that. On Wednesday, March 6th, I attended the Decalash grand opening in the Garden Market. That was very well attended, and the owners gifted our Western Springs Foundation for Educational Excellence $1,500 from its earnings. So that was very nice. On March 8th, Village Manager Velkme, Director Supert, and I met with the WCMC liaison Mike Fricano and our Baxter and Woodman consultant regarding the regional planning grant and the STP shared fund opportunities for Western Springs. STP shared fund grants are for larger scale or multi-jurisdictional projects. The projects that were identified already have grant funding in the works, but we were encouraged to continue to look for other projects in the future that might qualify for the STP shared fund. And I would like to echo the compliments from Trustee Allen and Trustee Rudolph regarding the water and sewer guide. I know this was a joint effort from many people, but thank you, Director Turi, Director Supert especially, for your work on this. It was important to the board to get this out to every home that or business that has a water bill, so that they can have this information at hand. So thank you very much. And that concludes my report. Village Manager Belkney.
Thank you, President Gallagher. Well, on March 5th, I also attended a meeting, but this was on legalization of recreational cannabis. And this was at the LaGrange Village Hall. It was a mix of area village managers, directors, and law enforcement personnel. We know that Governor Pritzker has made it known that this is an issue that the state of Illinois will be addressing, and they are moving towards legalization of recreational use. Some people are for it, some are against, but nevertheless, our concern is that if it does come to a fruition, that the extent of local authority over zoning, licensing, local taxation, employees in the workplace rules, DUI enforcement prosecution, tax revenue sharing, nuisance, and so forth, these are all issues that we have to tackle if and when it is legalized. So we are beginning to familiarize ourselves, and we will probably also be taking some stands on local control on these issues. So, as Trustee Berry says, more to come on this issue.
Mm-hmm.
And that is my report for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Jurusik?
No report other than to say that a couple of my partners met with the legislators who are promoting the recreational use legislation. Nothing is concrete at this time. There was an article in the Tribune or the Sun-Times that sort of profiled, some of the pros and cons and some of, the data points on marijuana use in Illinois nationally. We will work with you just like we did when they rolled out the dispensary and the ag licensing. Will work with you to make sure the regulations are complied with, and to the extent the village has to modify its zoning codes or its business codes, we'll give you advice there.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's it. Okay. Is there a motion to recess to a closed meeting?
I make the motion to recess to the closed meeting for the purpose of discussion of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. However, the meeting to consider an increase in compensation to a specific employee of a public body that is subject to a local government wage increase transparency act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with the act.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Clerk Horvath, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Madam President. Trustee Allen.
Aye.
Trustee Hansen.
Aye.
Trustee Rudolph.
Aye.
Trustee Sifferman.
Aye.
Trustee Timick absent. Trustee Terrell.
Aye.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now in closed session. We will only discuss the item that Trustee Terrell mentioned. No other business will be discussed in closed session. At the end of that meeting, we will reopen this meeting only for the purpose of adjourning. No other business will be discussed then as well. Thank you for attending, and good evening.